My name is Serena Calloway, 32 years old. If you'd asked me a year ago what would finally make me stop bailing out my family, I probably would have said something dramatic. A screaming match, a slammed door, some big blow-up in a parking lot. I wouldn't have guessed it would be a phone call about a party I wasn't invited to. On paper, my life looked fine. I had a steady job, a small savings, and a boyfriend, Ethan, who actually knew how to show up. We shared a quiet apartment across town, the kind with thin walls and decent light, and a landlord who fixed things, eventually. But none of that mattered to my family. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a resource, a co-signer, a backup plan. 6 months earlier, my cousin Mia found a house. "It's perfect," she said, sending me blurry videos of a narrow hallway and creaky stairs. "So much character. I can see everything already. Plants, candles, movie nights, maybe even a little studio." The house was old. Someone else had lived there for years. The roof was tired, the gutters sagging. The ceiling above the laundry room bowed like someone had sat on it. My mom called it charming. My dad said it had good bones. Mia said it was once in a lifetime. The bank said Mia didn't qualify for the mortgage. That's where I came in. They called me one night while Ethan and I were eating leftovers on the couch. I could hear the script in my mom's voice before she even got to the point. "You're doing so well," she said. "You're responsible. The bank trusts people like you." What she meant was, "We need you, again." They wanted me to co-sign, just to help her get started. They promised Mia would make the payments. They promised it was just a formality. They promised. Ethan paused the show we were watching and mouthed, "You don't have to do this." But I did, or at least that's what it felt like. So I said yes. I went to the meeting. I signed the papers. My name and Mia's, neatly printed side by side, tied to a 30-year mortgage on a house I didn't live in. For a while, everything was fine. Then the first rainstorm hit. Leaks in the hallway, water stains blooming in the upstairs bedroom, a soft, terrifying sag appearing above the laundry room. The begging started a week later. Mia called first, voice shaky, talking about emergency repairs and urgent contractors. I told her I'd look at my budget, which was my polite way of saying no. Then my mom called. She cried before she even said hello. "Serena, if we don't fix this, the whole place could be ruined. All of Mia's dreams, gone." My dad called after that. He almost never asked me for anything directly. He preferred quiet expectation. But that night, he broke character. "We're desperate," he said. "We'll pay you back. We'll even put it in writing if that's what you need. We just need $10,300 for the roof. After that, we'll be fine." Mia echoed it in a text. "Last time, I promise." Ethan watched me pace the living room, phone pressed to my ear, that familiar squeeze in my chest, tightening with every word. "You don't owe them this," he said when I hung up. "You already co-signed. That's huge." I knew he was right. I also knew exactly what would happen if I said no. They'd call me selfish. They'd act like I wanted the house to fall apart. They'd tell everyone I let my own family drown while I sat on my little savings. So I did what I always do. I compromised with myself. I said yes, but with conditions. "I'll help," I told them, "but the money goes directly to the contractor, not to you, and this is the last time. I mean it." I set up a contractor portal payment for $10,300, tagged specifically for the roof. I told them to send me the invoices. They acted grateful. They sent updates. "We'll pay you back. You'll see. We're so lucky to have you." For a while, I believed them. Then came the call. Mia rang one afternoon while I was finishing up emails at work. Ethan was at my place that day, sitting on the couch with his laptop, working through some designs. He gave me a small smile when he saw her name light up my screen. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound casual. "How's the roof?" She laughed. "Almost done. We're planning a housewarming." "That's great," I said. "What day? I'll see if Ethan can get off early." There was a pause, just long enough for my stomach to dip. "Oh," Mia said, her voice going a little lighter, like she was reading off a script. "You're not invited." I blinked. "What?" "It's just close relatives," she said. "Small thing. You know how it is." I actually laughed. I thought she was joking, but she didn't laugh with me. She just let the silence stretch out, her breathing quiet on the other end. And then, from somewhere behind her, I heard my mom's voice, faint but clear. "You'll understand someday." Something slid into place inside me then, like a lock clicking shut. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I didn't remind them whose name was on the mortgage or who had just wired $10,300 to keep their ceiling from caving in. I just said, "Got it," and ended the call. It wasn't about the party. Not really. It was about the pattern. They cried, begged, promised. I caved. They got what they wanted. I disappeared. A helpful stranger, not family. I sat there for a minute, phone still in my hand, the room suddenly too quiet. Ethan watched me from the couch, his expression shifting from curious to concerned. "What happened?" he asked. "They're having a housewarming," I said. "I'm not invited. It's just for close family." His jaw tightened. "After everything you've done?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop. I logged into the contractor's payment portal. When the page loaded, my stomach turned. Every dollar I'd transferred was still sitting there, untouched. They hadn't even started the payment process. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. I froze the account. Every cent was locked. Then I went further. I called the mortgage company, gave them my information, and told them I wanted my name removed. It wasn't instant, but it was possible. There were forms, verifications, steps, but the process started that day. By the time I closed the laptop, my hands were shaking, not from fear, from the adrenaline of finally pulling a lever in my own life. Ethan sat down beside me. "Serena, what did you do?" "I stopped being their safety net," I said, for once. The next morning, my phone was a bomb going off. 42 missed calls. Mia, Mom, Dad, numbers I didn't recognize. Text messages stacked on top of each other. "What did you do? Call us now. This isn't funny. You're ruining everything." By noon, they were outside my building. I watched them from my 5th-floor window. My mom was yelling into the intercom. My dad paced, phone to his ear, red-faced. Mia sat on the front steps, arms crossed, looking like this was all some giant misunderstanding I'd created. I didn't go down. I didn't answer the buzzer. I just stood there, holding my coffee, feeling the weight of something I probably should have realized a long time ago. In this family, you're only close when they need something, and they forget fast. This time, I was the one who remembered. They came back that night. I knew it was them before I even checked. There's a rhythm to the way your family presses a buzzer when they're desperate, fast, frantic, like they're trying to outrun the consequences. It was almost 7 p.m. Ethan and I were eating takeout on the coffee table, some show playing in the background that neither of us was actually watching. The buzzer went off, again and again. He muted the TV. "You want me to handle it?" I shook my head, even though my stomach was doing tight little flips. "No, I need to see how they're going to play this." I walked over to the intercom and pressed the button. "Yeah?" There was a beat of silence, then my dad's voice came through, low, controlled. "Serena, it's us. We need to talk." No yelling, no accusations. Different strategy. I buzzed them in without another word. When they stepped into the apartment, they didn't look like the people I'd seen screaming into the intercom earlier. They looked composed. My mom smoothed her hair. My dad tucked his phone into his pocket like this was a normal visit. Ethan stayed in the kitchen, leaning on the counter, close enough to hear, far enough to give me room. My mom sat on the edge of the couch like she was at a doctor's appointment. My dad paced once, then settled into the chair across from me. For a full minute, nobody spoke. Then my dad cleared his throat. "If the contractor's account is frozen," he began, "and your name's coming off the mortgage, then, look, just lend us the $10,300 directly." He said it like he was offering a reasonable compromise. "We'll pay you back," my mom added quickly. "We can sign something if that makes you comfortable. You want it official? Fine, let's make it official." I just stared at them. A week ago, I was apparently not close family enough for a chair at their big celebration. Now, suddenly, they were ready to do things properly, write contracts, behave like responsible adults. It would have been easy to say no. It would have felt good, even. But I knew how this story ended if I refused. The roof wouldn't be fixed. The leaks would get worse. They'd start missing mortgage payments. The house would become another crisis that somehow landed in my lap. Except this time they'd show up with suitcases and sad faces, talking about staying just for a few weeks in my small apartment with Ethan. They would find a way to make their problem my emergency again. So I said yes, not because I trusted them, because I wanted control. "I'll do it," I said slowly. "I'll transfer the money directly, but this time it's under my terms." My mom relaxed a little. "Of course, honey. Whatever makes you feel secure." "I want a contract," I continued, ignoring the way she flinched at that word. "Written. Clear. Signed by both of you. A repayment schedule. And I want it reviewed by someone neutral before any money leaves my account." They looked at each other. I could see it. A flicker of annoyance. The brief calculation. Then they nodded in unison. "Fine," my dad said. "If that's what it takes." Whatever helps you feel better, Mom added, as if my boundaries were an emotional quirk. Ethan stepped forward then. I can help draft something simple, he offered. Nothing complicated, just clear. My dad's eyes flicked to him, assessing. For a second, I thought he'd push back, but he didn't. He just nodded once and stood up. We'll sign, he said. Just don't let this house fall apart over pride. Pride. That was their word for me finally saying no. 2 days later, they came back. We sat in the same spots. Them on the couch, me in the chair, Ethan at the table with his laptop open. On the coffee table between us lay a printed contract. The amount, the date, the repayment plan, the monthly installments starting 60 days after the transfer. This is straightforward, Ethan said. You both read it? My dad waved his hand. We trust our daughter. That line would have meant something once. Now it just sounded like a shortcut. Sign, I said. They did. Their signatures bled into the paper. My dad's heavy and slanted, my mom's looping and soft. I initialed my parts, dated everything, and made copies. An hour later, I sat alone in the bedroom and pressed send on another transfer. $10,300, straight from my account to theirs. No portal, no middleman, no excuses. The contractor got paid that same day. Repairs started a week later. Things went quiet after that. Not warm, not reconciled, just quiet. My parents didn't call unless they needed to confirm something small. Mia vanished entirely. The updates I got came from social media. Pictures of her standing in the yard under the new roof, hosting little get-togethers with neighbors, laughing under string lights like nothing had ever been at risk. No mention of me, no tag, no thank you post about the cousin who made it possible. I told myself I didn't care. Some days I believed it. Then one weekend, my Uncle Mark came into town. He's my mom's older brother by 10 years. Never married, no kids of his own, and never really involved in the usual family chaos. He has this way of watching people, quiet, steady, that makes you feel like he's 2 steps ahead of the conversation. He went over to see the house. They were proud to show it off. My mom later said she made him grilled cheese and tomato soup, that they gave him a full tour. New shingles, repaired drywall, no more leaks. Everything was finally coming together. But that's not the part that mattered. Mark called me the next day and asked if we could meet. Just you and me, he said, somewhere neutral. We picked a diner off the highway, the kind with cracked red booths and a menu that hadn't changed in 20 years. He was already there when I arrived, hands folded on the table, coffee half drunk. He didn't make small talk. I visited your parents yesterday, he said. They showed me the roof, the repairs. They're proud of the place. I saw, I replied, online. He watched me for a second like he was measuring how much I could handle. They thought I went to the bathroom, he continued. I didn't. I was standing in the hallway. That's when I heard them. My chest tightened. Heard what? He stared down at his coffee. Your dad asked if you started bothering them about the contract yet. Of course he did. And your mom laughed, Mark went on. His voice was flat now. She said, Serena still thinks we're going to pay her back. Let her. After everything we've done for her, she owes us more than that. The words landed like a physical blow. She owes us. It wasn't just the money, it was my life, my choices, my silence. Then Mark added quietly, she said you'd get over it, that you always do. I sat there, staring at the crumbs on the table between us, trying to breathe past the pressure in my throat. He didn't interrupt, he just waited. When I finally spoke, my voice sounded unfamiliar. What? Money did you think they were talking about? He looked up at me then, eyes sharp. That's what I wanted to ask you. So I told him everything. The co-signing, the roof, the $10,300, the contract, the promises. I laid it all out in a straight line, watching his face harden with every detail. When I finished, he leaned back in the booth and exhaled slowly. They signed that contract willingly? He asked. Yes. And they haven't paid you a single cent? Not one. He nodded once, like something he'd been unsure about had just been confirmed. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You didn't deserve that. For a second, I almost cried. Not because of what my parents did, because someone in the family finally said out loud what I'd been too tired to admit. We didn't talk much after that. We finished our food in near silence. When we parted in the parking lot, he squeezed my shoulder. Whatever you decide to do next, he said, don't let them convince you you're overreacting. You're not. I didn't sleep that night. Not from rage, from clarity. All of it lined up now. The fake politeness, the sudden cooperation, the way they signed that contract without blinking. It hadn't been an act of good faith. It was a prop, a piece of paper they never intended to honor. They weren't waiting to repay me. They were waiting for me to forget. But I don't forget. Not anymore. The next morning, I opened a new tab on my laptop, typed in civil lawyer family contract dispute, and dialed the first number that looked like it didn't belong to a scam. When the receptionist asked what the case was about, I didn't hesitate. I loaned my parents money, I said. We have a signed contract. They refused to pay it back. She didn't sound surprised. We handle that kind of thing all the time, she said. Let's schedule a consultation. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. There it was, the line in the sand. They thought I'd always cave. They thought I'd always choose peace over truth. They thought I'd always protect their image over my own future. This time, I was choosing differently. The lawyer's office was smaller than I expected. 2 rooms, a receptionist, and a man who looked like he'd spent decades watching families tear themselves apart over less than $10,000. He shook my hand, sat down across from me, and opened some in the manila folder I'd brought. Inside were the contract my parents signed, the bank transfer confirmation, the emails, the texts, all the evidence of a promise they never intended to keep. He flipped through everything slowly, nodding. Nothing shocked him. Not the amount, not the signatures, not the family dynamics. When he got to the last page, he set the folder down. They signed this willingly? He asked. Yes. And they haven't paid you anything? I shook my head. He leaned back in his chair. All right, then we'll follow procedure. We give them one last chance to respond officially. If they ignore it, we file. He wrote up a demand letter. Clean, precise, and polite, in the coldest way possible. It outlined the contract, the repayment terms, their complete failure to comply, and gave them 15 days to respond. We emailed it to them, mailed a physical copy too. Then I waited. 15 days passed. Nothing. Not a call, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive message from Mia, which almost shocked me. So we filed. Civil court. My lawyer said my case was straightforward. No loopholes, no ambiguity. They signed, they owed. 3 days after the lawsuit went through, I looked up from my desk at work and saw my mother standing in the lobby. My blood ran cold, not from fear, from embarrassment. She was pressed against the glass door, waving frantically. My dad stood behind her, phone out, recording, just in case I made a scene. My manager walked up behind me. Is everything okay? Yes, I said, even though it wasn't. They're leaving. I walked closer to the glass but didn't open the door. I mouthed, You can't be here. My mom's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her hand to the door. Serena, please. I shook my head. My manager stepped between us, and my parents backed away, their performance over before it even began. That night, my phone rang. Mia. I let it go to voicemail, but she called again and again until I finally picked up. The moment I answered, she exploded. You actually filed? You're suing your own parents? Are you serious, Serena? Over what? A couple $1,000s? Her voice was dripping with disgust, like I was the monster in the family, not the daughter they'd stolen from. You should be ashamed of yourself, she spit. And then she hung up. I didn't call back. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself to someone who saw me as an ATM with legs. A week later, I got an email from my parents' lawyer. They wanted to discuss resolution. Translation, they were panicking. My lawyer arranged a virtual meeting. Their lawyer was stiff, professional, all about moving forward amicably. They're willing to settle the matter if you agree to drop the lawsuit, he said. How much are they offering? My lawyer asked. Half, $5,150. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. No, I said plainly. Full amount, plus $2,000 in damages. Their lawyer blinked. $2,000 for what? For the stunt they pulled, I said calmly. For lying, for stringing me along, for making it clear they never intended to pay me back. He hesitated. I'll discuss it with them. A week passed. More silence. Then I got an email. A PDF of a transfer confirmation. $12,300. Every cent. They caved. No apology, no explanation, just the money. I stared at the screen for a long time. I thought I'd feel victorious, vindicated, relieved. Instead, I felt something heavier, a kind of quiet grief. The kind you feel when the door finally closes and you know it's never opening again. I told Ethan, and he hugged me, long and tight, no questions asked. I'm proud of you, he whispered. You finally protected yourself. But the story wasn't done, not even close. Because I underestimated 2 things. My family's ability to weaponize narrative, and Mia's talent for chaos. It started small. I began getting tagged in vague Facebook posts from extended relatives, quotes about loyalty and betrayal, lines like, Family first, unless money changes people. Some folks forget where they came from. I ignored them, blocked the worst offenders. Then came a message from a girl I barely remembered from childhood church camps. Hey, I heard what happened. Are you really suing your parents? I'm not judging. I just can't believe it. I left it unread. But then came the photo. Someone posted a picture of my parents and Mia standing under the newly repaired roof with the caption, "When family stands together, nothing can break you. Grateful for love that doesn't come with a price tag." Classy, subtle, a perfect little dagger aimed at me. I didn't need to dig to know who orchestrated it. Mia was setting the stage for her final performance, painting herself as the loyal daughter, my parents as the wounded saints, and me as the cold-hearted outsider who chose money over family. But what Mia didn't realize is that Mark wasn't done either. One Sunday, he invited me over for dinner, just him and his wife. No surprises, he promised. When I arrived, he handed me his phone and said, "You need to see this." It was a group chat, a big one, dozens of relatives. Mia had started it. Her first message was a wall of text accusing me of destroying the family with lawyers, of manipulating Mark, of being unstable. She'd even dragged Ethan into it. Mark hadn't responded in the chat. Not once. Not yet. But now he looked at me and said, "I'm putting a stop to this. Not for you. For me. I won't let her poison the whole family." He called a meeting for the next week. A small one. At his house. His rules. Only relatives willing to actually listen. I didn't want to go, but I owed him that. When I arrived, the driveway was full. My aunt's little sedan, my cousin's cars, even an uncle I hadn't seen since high school. Mark stood in the living room like a judge about to open court. When everyone sat down, he said, "We're not leaving this room until we talk about what actually happened, and until some apologies are made." My mom wasn't there, my dad wasn't there, and Mia, no. They stayed home. Cowards always do. Mark spoke first. He laid everything out. The loans, the roof, the contract, the lawsuit. He told them what he overheard, word for word. He read sections of the contract aloud. He called my parents' behavior shameful and despicable. No one defended them, not one person. A cousin whispered, "Honestly, I'm not surprised." Another said, "They've been using her for years." And for the first time in my life, I felt something close to closure. When the meeting ended, Mark handed me a small envelope. Inside was a note from his wife and a grocery store gift card. "For all the dinners you missed because you were busy rescuing everyone else, now it's your turn." I cried in my car before driving home, not from sadness, but because someone finally saw me. That night, I blocked every number except Mark's and my aunt's. Whatever came next from my parents or Mia didn't matter. They could scream into their echo chamber forever. I was done listening. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was 9:30 p.m., the kind of hour where the hallway outside my apartment is usually dead silent. But then, a knock, soft at first, then again, more insistent. Ethan looked up from his laptop. "You waiting on something?" I shook my head and walked to the door. The peephole showed a blurry figure, hunched slightly, holding something heavy. I leaned closer. It was Mia. Not just Mia. Mia with a duffel bag slung over her shoulder like she'd run away from home. Her hair was messy, her makeup smudged, her clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in them. Or hadn't slept at all. I opened the door halfway. Didn't unblock the chain. Didn't smile. I just said, "What are you doing here?" Her voice sounded like it had been dragged across gravel. "I need a place to stay." I blinked, hard. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was surreal. I waited for the punchline. For her to call this some social experiment. For a camera crew to pop out of the stairwell like this was some twisted reality show. But she just stood there, alone, not moving, not blinking, holding onto that bag like it was the last piece of her identity. "My roommate kicked me out," she muttered. Long story. I didn't know where else to go. Wow. Now she needed me. Not for money, not for co-signing, not for reputation. For survival. The irony was almost poetic. But the part that shocked me most wasn't that she'd shown up. It was how fast the answer rose to my lips. No. She didn't argue, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stood there another few seconds, like she expected reality to warp around her, like the universe would reconfigure itself back to the way things used to be, where I was the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes. But it didn't. I didn't. Eventually, she nodded once, turned around, and walked away down the hallway, dragging that duffel like it weighed 100 pounds. I closed the door, locked every lock, leaned against the wood and exhaled slowly, like my lungs were finally remembering how to work. Ethan came over quietly. "You okay?" Yeah, I said. For the first time, yeah. The next morning, my phone rang. Uncle Mark. I told him what happened. He wasn't surprised. Yeah, he said, sighing. She's burned a lot of bridges lately. And your parents, well, let's just say they're not exactly stepping up for her. Mortgage problems? I guessed. Worse, he said. They're behind, way behind, and I think they thought you'd eventually cave. Show up with a check. Fix everything. That hit harder than I expected. Not because I felt bad, but because he was right. Even after everything, they still believed I'd fold, that the guilt they'd trained me with would pull me back, that I'd swallow the entire history of betrayal, disrespect, manipulation for them again. But not this time, not ever again. A few days later, I saw Mia. It was a chilly morning, sunlight cutting through the cold like a thin knife. I was on my way to grab coffee, and there she was, sitting outside a cafe near my building, alone at a small metal table. Her duffel bag was gone, her clothes were clean, but she looked empty. Not dramatic, not smug, just someone who'd run out of scripts, out of plans, out of people to use. She didn't see me, and I didn't approach her, because I didn't owe her conversation, or closure, or comfort, or a chance to rewrite history. I didn't owe her anything at all. And for the first time, that truth didn't feel cold. It felt peaceful, like I'd been carrying something heavy for years without realizing it, and now it was finally gone. When I got home, I found Ethan cooking dinner, pasta on the stove, garlic bread in the oven. He glanced over his shoulder and smiled. You're early. Yeah, I said, taking off my coat. Just wanted to be home. And that was it. That was the moment. The moment I realized the most unexpected part of this entire story wasn't the lawsuit or the family meetings or the smear campaigns or even Mia showing up at my door with a bag. It was this feeling, this soft, quiet, steady peace. Because the chaos wasn't mine anymore. The emergencies weren't mine. The debt, the manipulation, the guilt, none of it belonged to me. They could scream into their echo chambers. They could post all the vague quotes they wanted. They could rewrite the story 100 times. I didn't care. I didn't listen. I didn't need them to understand my choices. For once, I finally understood myself. And the door that slammed shut the day I froze that renovation account, I never looked back at it again.